right, welcome everyone.
Thank you.
Before we get started, just take a moment. We have some new folks in the clerk's office. New folk in the clerk's office. I'm excited to introduce Christy Smithers. She is joining us from Wasilla. She was the Wasilla City Clerk for a few years. Christy has run 50 elections.
Wow.
51. Oh, Amanda. So we're really excited to have her on our team. Brings tons of great experience. And we think that her role will be great working with the commission closely. So we are excited to have her on our team. And of course, Nina and Mimi's been working with us since 2009. In the By-Mail Board, and she is the By-Mail Board lead now. And so she's here at this meeting just so that we're all talking about our integration points along the way. There's a lot of handoff between the By-Mail Board and the Election Commission. So we are really excited to have the team here. And of course, Barbara Jones, Municipal Clerk, and I'm Amanda, the Deputy Clerk. So,
and Christy, have you met everybody?
Yes, I
okay,
did.
great.
Yes.
Good.
So welcome. Thank you so much for your continuing service with the Election Commission. We are really thankful and grateful to have your experience on our Election Commission. So we'll just do a quick roll call for the record. Bonnie Lynn?
Here.
Joyce?
Here.
Jim?
Here?
Barbara?
Here.
Great.
So you have a quorum. Unfortunately, there's still some vacancies, but the code does say that a quorum counts from appointed members. And so we've been talking to the mayor's office about appointing people. Unfortunately, because of the requirement of having to serve at a precinct, it's as Joyce and Amanda and I have talked, taking 2 or 3 or 4 weeks out of your schedule, we're having difficulty recruiting people.
We've had a few folks apply, but they haven't met the requirements for being an election worker previously, and then the other of the time is really the biggest issue of folks that are interested in volunteering on a board. It is hard when it's sort of a full-time job for a few weeks.
So we'll keep working.
And those are the requirements. Because if we know people, would you like us to recommend them to you, or?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we've been reaching out as we've been recruiting for the precincts. We've been reaching out to folks too that might be interested, but it's always a tight squeeze to get all of our election workers, which is part of the challenge. So I think we can head down the agenda and roll right into our new business of the nominating the chair and the vice chair.
And so typically the staffer for the commission manages the first part of elections. We do the same thing for the assembly. So Amanda will open the nominations.
Is there any nominations for the chair?
I nominate Joyce.
I second that.
Excellent. Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of Joyce, or do we want to, I guess
Sure.
there's no other.
So say aye.
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 You can vote too.
I did say that.
Okay, great.
And we can open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Jim.
I would second that.
Can I decline?
Yes.
On the grounds, this is my last year, and I think it would be really a good idea to have the vice chair be someone that'll be there next year. If that's all right with you.
I nominate Barbara.
But I'm on the same boat.
Me
Because
too.
this would be my last year, so.
Is it your last
This
year?
is my
because you-
third year.
But you can
You can be reappointed.
You can be reappointed for another 3 years. This is my 6th year.
No.
Oh, okay. And it's your 6th year. So
But
I
it's-
will be the vice, I mean, I am available, I guess.
All right.
So
Any other
Did we
nominations?
get a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Well, Joyce and Barbara. Excellent. We wanted to take some time while we had you all together just to let you know some of the work that we've been doing in the clerk's office over the past 18 months or so. So we are just down on item 2 under new business. The Assembly has the Ethics and Election Committee, which is currently chaired by Assemblymember Ernie Hall. And through the Ethics and Election Committee, they have directed the clerk's office to explore alternative voting methods. And so we've spent about the last 18 months exploring alternative voting methods outside of the state of Alaska. We've really looked at a lot of different things, a lot of different ways to run elections. But one reason that we were beginning to look at alternative voting methods is that there was some concerns with municipal elections, and it really comes down to 3 major things. As you know, we are troubled continuously by the low voter turnout with our municipal elections. When it's just assembly members on the ballot, we see between 19 and 22%. And we see some peaks occasionally during mayoral elections. It was interesting, in last year during the regular election, we only saw 27%, and it wasn't until the runoff that we had 34% of registered voters engaged in the municipal election process. Local elections, so important, impact really our day-to-day life and all the touch points from our roads, our fire, our police service, parks, and all the things that make Anchorage a great place to live.
And marijuana taxes this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been exploring ways to engage more people in the process to address that. Our precinct-based model is a very inefficient use of our community resources. When we talk about the precinct-based model, here in Anchorage, we have 122 precincts. We hire about 650 election workers. And to those 122 precincts, we deliver 646 voting booths, 122 black ballot boxes, 2,100 pens. So we are really sending out a lot of equipment and supplies all across the city. That gets a lot of wear and tear on them too. And last, we have, specifically over the last about 5 years, had a lot of challenges in the recruiting, training, and retaining our election officials. I mentioned it takes about 650 election workers to make our elections happen. So it's this current model that we have is really unsustainable and costly, and it's not reaching our goal in the mission of the clerk's office to engage people in the local democratic process. So when we've been looking at other voting outside of Alaska, we keep coming back to vote by mail. Currently there's 3 states that are vote by mail. Colorado, Oregon, and Washington have been vote by mail states, and they have increased voter turnout in those states. I like to talk about King County in the 2012 presidential election. They had 86% of their voters engaged in the election process. It's just a significant part of the population that was engaged in what was happening at the ballot. So how does vote by mail work? Before we talk a little bit more about the advantages of it, vote by mail is a model where we would mail a ballot to every registered voter within the municipality of Anchorage. We currently have about 209,000 registered voters, so everyone would receive a ballot about 2 to 3 weeks before the election. They would have the opportunity to review the ballot, study the issues. This is one of my favorite parts to talk about when I'm talking about vote by mail, is that opportunity to be educated on the issues on the ballot, especially with our local elections. All those bonds, we have a 14-inch ballot this year. There's so much text on it, 9-point font. So literally a lot of stuff happening on that ballot, and that opportunity to sit at your kitchen table and really review everything is one of the benefits of vote by mail. So you would review the ballot, vote your choices, and return your ballot. You would put your ballot into a secrecy sleeve, put it into an envelope, and sign the oath and affidavit on the outside of that envelope. And from there, sort of a choose your own adventure, you can put the ballot into a secure Dropbox, very similar to what you would think about like a DVD return Dropbox, steel framed, concrete to the ground infrastructure. You can return your ballot to an accessible voting center that's part of the vote by mail model. There'd be probably about 3 locations here in Anchorage where folks could go if they had any sort of issues that needed to be addressed alongside the election. Or you could utilize the United States Postal Service. I always like to talk about the 45-cent stamp is a lot cheaper than the cost to drive to your polling location, stand in line, vote, and come back. So this summer we put together a stakeholders group of
Is this the floor?
610.
16.
We put together a stakeholders group and we reached out to a diverse members in our community. We wanted to have somebody from the business community, a neutral rights voting advocate. We had someone to address ADA concerns, election worker. Joyce served on this from the Election Commission, so we were thankful to have her voice in the conversation. We had the United States Postmaster for Anchorage. We had GIS expert in communications and marketing education. The group bloomed over the process. So we started with 12. I remember we were really excited when we identified the first 12 that we wanted to invite. And then every time we talked to somebody, they wanted to invite someone else. So by the end of it, we had about 48 members that were on the stakeholders group. So it was great, but we really got to reach out to diverse groups within Anchorage. So we were very thankful about that. We worked through the vote by mail model as a group. We explored the 3 jurisdictions that are voting by mail, and we explored what the concerns would be about rolling this model out for Anchorage, what the benefits would be, and at the end of it, the group came to a conclusion that to move forward and to continue to support the vote by mail model. And so from there, a resolution was put before the Anchorage Assembly to direct the clerk's office to continue working towards this vote by mail model with the likely outcome of having a vote by mail election in April of 2017. So we have been, and this happened all very quickly, so July we put together the stakeholders group. We met July, September, and November, and then by December 8th the Assembly is directing the clerk's office to explore this vote by mail model. So at the same time that we were working with this election stakeholders group and exploring this vote by mail model, we were also here in the clerk's office reviewing all of our procedures, which is really going to come into play as we continue talking about this 2017 rollout of vote by mail.
Since we're among friends and family, we'll let you know that our initial resolution that we were asked to prepare had no date. It just said that the clerk is directed to explore vote by mail. That's what we understood the Assembly had asked us, the chair of the Ethics and Elections Committee. Well, after he saw it on the agenda, he said, "Oh, you missed the date. It needs to be April of 2017. And that, I'm just letting you know, is a really, really short time frame to really essentially create an entire new election system. So I want you to know that that was not, although we're excited about it and we're willing to embrace this, that I want to let you know that was specifically a direction from the Assembly.
So we have been working to lay out all of our procedures here, along with exploring procedures for other jurisdictions that are vote by mail. I spent some time in November in Washington. I traveled to 3 counties, King County, Thurston County, and Pierce County, to explore how they've done vote by mail. And that has sort of led to some shifts in how we are going to handle elections and our procedures this year to prepare for 2017 with the full rollout of vote by mail. Specifically, one thing that we recognize is currently about 10% of our voters, between 10 and 15% of our voters, vote by mail or vote early. That's going to flip to probably 98% of people that are going to be voting by mail. And we'll have a few folks that might access those accessible vote centers, but that will still also come back to us in a way that we need to process. It won't just be like a AccuVote specifically. So we are beginning to address those big changes that are coming, and we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about it at our training at 11, and we'll continue the conversation of this preparation for 2017 vote by mail. And so one thing that is going to happen because of this is the Election Commission's role. We're very thankful for all the support that you've brought to elections over the years. And one thing that we keep talking about is the Election Commission is this august body. They are a quasi-judicial body, and we want the work that you do to reflect that role. So we recognize that currently and in the past, the Election Commission has done a lot of clerical work, a lot of paperwork and processing, and we really want the Election Commission role to be elevated to this quasi-judicial august body role where you will be reviewing specifically the question ballots still as laid out in code, but then as far as the absentee by mail and the absentee in person, we will have you review only the no count ones and have the clerical work of the review of everything that's set to count be handled by Nina's by mail board. And so I think Barbara has, I keep mentioning, we've spent the last 8 months working on procedures. Nina has been employed in the clerk's office since last election, specifically to work on these procedures. So we're so grateful and thankful that she's been able to dedicate so much time to this project. But it has been very interesting in actually getting those procedures down on paper. We've really been able to identify how many times items are reviewed. So I'm going to let Barbara talk a little bit about that work.
So one of the things that happens when you're looking at a procedure, and we have sat and walked and talked through a procedure, and you know we've done this before with your procedures. So the procedure says ballot, and someone says, well, it's not really the ballot, it's the ballot envelope. Right. So we change it to ballot envelope. We knew that. But that's what we have been doing all summer. We've been arguing about ballot or ballot envelope or little technical words like that. And it's been a really good exercise for us. I think that it's sort of like I've joked about driving your car. You know, you get in your car and you know exactly how to drive to City Hall. You can listen to the radio, you can talk to somebody, you can do whatever. But all of a sudden, when you write down how do you drive your car to City Hall, it's different. And so that's what we've been doing for all of these procedures. And one of the things that's happened is, for example, Nina tells me what they do with the by mail envelopes, and that they review something and that it gets re-reviewed, and then it goes to the commission to review. And I said, well, why is the commission reviewing and counting that when you've already had it reviewed twice? And so my concern about that is twofold. And the first concern is that we had some issues last year with the handoffs from either the by mail board to the commission, or from the red bags to the commission, or to those were those were problems because of space is one issue, and because the procedures weren't clear is another issue, and there were probably other issues, but the space issue is a concern. So that's one part of it. But the second part of it is, Amanda told me that one of my favorite lines that I say to people is the do it, discard it, delegate it, delay it, that little rule. Well, we've already done it. We have done the review and we've checked those envelopes. Why are we delegating it back to the commission to do it again? It's a violation of that process to only handle something once. So as a result of that, we've rewritten the by-mail board procedures so that the by-mail board handles it once, and then the counts, whether they're a full count or an area-wide count or a reject, just get separated up in the by-mail room. The rejects are not true rejects because they're for deputy clerk for the review. And then after Amanda reviews them, then if they're true rejects, then they go to the commission for your review, because that's exactly what Amanda said. Your job is as the judges, and it's the most important thing that you do, is you make a decision whether a vote counts or not. That's your job. And so we're going to do this clerical part and then give it to you for that final review.
Isn't it going to be a lot of work for Amanda to review them after the by-mail board? Wouldn't it be easier to go?
She already does. She has reviewed.
But I know, but we're talking about an increased volume. And so that's where I'm coming from, because you're talking about, that we're not able to do it, because of the volume. You're doing
In a by-mail election or in our current election?
No one in the by-mail.
Okay, by-mail. I'm not talking about by-mail.
And also-
So let's come back to that question,
Okay,
okay?
so then my question is that if we're not going to do it in the by-mail election, then it probably should be that way for this election. So
Let
that
me-
you have consistency and
Can I
continuity.
say something really
Yes.
quick too? If it's a no count, it goes directly to the election commission. It's only the ones that are under further review that come to me for the decision of count or election commission. So
Okay.
if it's an automatic
No
no
count.
count, it
Okay,
goes.
that makes more
So
sense.
I'm not that review. It goes directly to the
I was
commission.
going to say, that is an awful lot of work to put
Yeah.
on your shoulders that I wouldn't think would be necessary when we could go through it and then give it to you,
Yeah.
and then you would have the time to look at the ones that are only left after that point.
So it'll just be, there's some that come in that are kind of goofy where, a husband and wife both got one and they just signed
Right,
the other ones. And
right.
so those ones we just review and we'll make a decision from there. If it's something that comes in and I review it and it's still no count, it's going to come to the commission. But some of those come in and we can determine that husband and wife signed. We can go back and look at their applications. We see that they just signed on the wrong ones. And then those can move forward as a count. So those decisions, and there's a handful of them, I would say, there's probably about 20 or 30 a year that are just sort of a little weird that we'll look at and make the determination. So that's what I'm looking at, but all the no counts are coming directly to the commission.
Okay.
One of the questions that I had, we received them from you, and occasionally there'd be one that was not signed by the voter. But it came to us as apparently it had been checked off and it was okay. And the decision had been made, apparently, that if they signed the registration to get that, then it took care of it. So that's not an issue. And it won't be an issue for you.
Right.
And so one of the things, that's another great example, Jim. So they already know, because they have the registers or the application, they know that the person signed.
Right.
And so to have that go down to the commission, have you guys, sort it, count it, review it on brims, and then say, oh, well, they signed the register, it's a full count. To me, that just makes no
Waste of time.
sense.
It seems like we did catch things though, having that double look at it. I mean, I felt like we were doing, I mean, I don't feel like we walked away where we hadn't done anything all day, except, so I guess that's a slight concern to me that, I think that having two different sets sometimes does help, but I don't know if it's efficient.
So I think that the question is, so how many do you have right now? How many do you have by mail right now?
3,000 to 4,000?
So this is where we need to talk about what our current procedure is and then how this is going to integrate to the by mail. If you have 2,000 or 3,000, next year we're going to have 104, at least 100,000. And the process is going to be different in a by mail election, but 4 of you can't review those. There is absolutely no way. So we have to make a transition to see how would this work. I think there is, a slight concern, but I think we've added a second step for Nina's crew to have, I'm not exactly sure what that step is, but we double checked it and it gets 2 reviews.
And one other thing is we've added extra staff to Nina's crew so that people are able to work in teams, so they'll have the 2 sets of eyes on one thing, which is additionally increase into the review on the things, which is slightly different from before because they weren't the final review, but now that they are the final review, they will be working in teams of 2. So one thing, as we're talking about this shift in how we're doing it, we wanted to come more closely in line with the way the state of Alaska has their Canvas board work, along with every county that I was at in Washington also has the sort of august body that just does the oversight, and they just get the handful of real concern rejected ballots that they actually come in and look at. So they have a scheduled time that they come in to look at it. But we'll still have the commission engaged with the question ballots this year.
And next year, if we think about that, if we increase our voter turnout, let's say we have 100,000 voters instead of 30, how many rejected ballots are we going to have?
So it's an interesting thing with vote by mail because there is still rejected ballots because of not signed and stuff like that. So we will still have a fair amount of rejected ballots, and the commission will be very engaged in that process.
But it'll be more than the current, we had about
2,000
2,000 rejected?
question ballots.
But how many?
200.
200. So from 200, we expect it may be 500. And so that public canvas and your review, it's going to take more time, but we think it's more important because you're making that decision on, the fundamental issue that we're here for, that we want every vote to count, and you're making a decision that this one doesn't. And we really appreciate that and really want to focus on that important work.
And I know I had talked to Barbara and Amanda that I think it's important for the commission to understand what goes on in your area. And so that we need to be able to observe that at some point so that we feel comfortable signing off, stating that the election is certified. Because, just by doing the ones that are questioned, you kind of need to know the process. And I had mentioned to both of them that I have been on canvas boards when I was in Minnesota. And basically that's what we did. We looked at all the rejected ones. And we were familiar with the process. And of course, people on the canvas board for the county that I lived in were people that were in charge of elections. So we knew what was going on, you know. So I mean, when I was director of elections for Minneapolis, I was on the canvas board, and let's say another city clerk was on the canvas board. You know, that's how we did it. And then we had some public members as well. And those public members were given an overview, or even, you know, maybe went to City Hall on one day to figure out what was going on, you know, so they had kind of a feel. So I think, you know, we talked about that's important, so the commission could come in and see what, you know, what Nina is doing, so that we understand what's going on. And then we're getting the ones that are rejected. And I think that by moving to the by mail has created, and that's what you said, has created a different way to look at what the commission does. And not spending all that time redoing what another area has done. So I don't know how you feel about
Yes.
it, but you know, I feel it's a good move. And I know we've talked about that, because I've been on the stakeholders group, you know, and have been in a couple times, and we've met and stuff. So I think that the commission is moving more toward its core mission, you know, of looking at things that are not right about the election, if you want to just be very, you know,
Right.
no, not technical words, but just not right, you know, so to speak. And that's what the commission looks
The
at.
balance.
Right, to see if there's something that can be done to get that ballot envelope for that person approved, so that their vote counts and that sort of thing. So, and I know since I've been on the commission, which is now my second term, there have been areas where we've had problems keeping track of your numbers with our numbers, and then we didn't keep track of the numbers one year because we didn't. And I remember Amanda calling me on the phone going, well, where is that accounting sheet? And I go, I don't know. You know, I don't know if she couldn't get a hold of who the chair was at the time, because I know I wasn't the chair. I go, I don't know where it is. You know, so I mean, there was a lot of sometimes if you know, and I see Jim, you know, where there were times where we weren't in sync and we weren't really sure what was happening, and then that kind of makes you wonder what's going on. So I think from what I'm hearing from the stakeholders group meetings, that, you know, there's going to be a little bit more, not that there wasn't, but more accountability. I mean, you know, I don't want to, I'm not saying anything negative, but I understand because I've been there.
More accountability.
You
I
know.
think that's the.
You're right. Within each particular group that's doing certain things.
Sounds like just a little tighter way of running it, so
Right,
that it's
right.
less apt to happen like what happened last year.
And then I also think that will open up the pool of people out there who would be able to serve what you were saying earlier, so I'm going to agree with that serve on the commission, you know, that maybe, you know, it's not a 2 or 3 week, more 3 week process, it's, you know, maybe a week. You know, you're coming in and you're doing this day, you know, whether it be right before the election, right after the election, you know, that kind of thing, where the commission is there. And so I think overall that's going to be everything's going to be a good change.
So we do anticipate that the work schedule will change. With Nina's crew taking over the absentee stuff, we think that's going to free up. Typically in the past, you've worked for a week before the election. And we think that you won't have to come in there. You'll come in probably for the week after the election to review the question ballots. But we have had the conversation with elevating the election commission to this august body to increase your rate of pay to more reflect the work that you're doing too. I know it's a sort of a volunteer service, but to increase you to $16 an hour to reflect more of this overview body than just the clerical work that is happening. And then the clerical work that continues will be done by workers here in City Hall at $12 an hour. So,
I think that's a great idea, and we've talked about that for a couple of years.
and
To
we,
get people in,
Yeah.
and you've had people from the city hall office, auxiliary, Mary Ellen, and Jackie, and some other people that have come in and been really helpful. But still, the commission was just down in the trenches with this awful county and reviewing and all that stuff, which had to be done at some point.
Yeah.
But I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm glad you are at that point.
And I think we've moved in this direction. We've sort of each year, I think as a commission, we've had the end of the year meeting, which has been very helpful for us. And I think what I heard the commission say last year at the end of the meeting was more tracking, more receipts. And that's part of the procedures. That's part of what you'll see. Every time you get handed ballots, you're going to sign off for them, and we're going to be tracking everywhere that the ballot's going. Christy is been working on some spreadsheets. Nina's been working on some tracking sheets, so we are going to know where every ballot is in City Hall.
And here's one of the other good things. You won't then have to work in the Ombudsman's conference room. So I'm sure Vicki is probably jumping for joy if she could hear that. But that was one of those space issues that we had.
Yeah.
And we had nowhere else to put you but to the week before the election, because voting is happening over in 105. And so now we will, Nina's group will be doing that, and then you'll start
The
day after the election, and then you'll just be in 105, which will be then the commission's space.
And then a question that comes to mind, what about after the election, when all of the individuals who have voted not in their own precinct, all of those ballots come in? Is that going to be,
The question
thank you, the
Question.
question, I totally blanked what I was calling it. The question ballots, is that something that the commission's going to work on?
That is the direct work of the commission.
Okay,
But-
I just wanted to clarify, because that's,
Yeah.
okay.
And because we have 4 members, and we're going to talk about this a lot in our training that we have, we are really focusing on this agile workforce where folks are able to be trained on various roles throughout City Hall. And so we will have some of Nina's crew working with you on the question ballots, but it'll be a commissioner and election official being able to work together at the computers to go through and be able to process those question ballots. So you'll have some experienced election officials that are really familiar with the runs and stuff like that.
And hopefully, next year, 2017, there won't hardly be any question ballots, because the people in precinct
Yeah.
that go to school and vote there, that won't be an issue anymore.
Yeah,
Hoorah.
it will significantly decrease the number of the question ballots,
Right,
and that's
yeah.
something we're really excited about. And I guess maybe one of the most important things, the conversation about vote by mail, is we are looking for space outside of City Hall. With vote by mail, we are going to significantly increase our footprint, and there's not space for us here, so we will probably have a specific elections site outside of City Hall where we will be processing the ballots. That is what Thurston County does in Washington. They have a small elections office within City Hall, and then all the processing is done in a warehouse space. And it was the model that I walked away from. Pierce County processes their vote by mail in their office, and it is so cramped that it made me feel anxious about the way that things were being processed, because there was like stacks of things everywhere. And it's sort of similar to sometimes how stuff looks here. And I just thought, as an outsider looking in, we need more space. And we've had the space conversation for a year and a half probably, and I've very much been against moving outside of City Hall. And I came back from Washington and I said, we have to move out of City Hall.
So I'll tell you something else that Amanda said about Thurston that I really liked. And this is one of the things that we've been working on. She said that the ballots come in and then they go to here and here and here and here and here, and they're done. So it's the room is set up for a logical flow. And for those of you that have
big difference.
Yes, right. And so for those of you that have been here on election night, we've tried to add the logical flow, so when people come in, they do a logical flow. And we recognize that that's the way that you don't make mistakes. And we're trying to emulate that.
Well, I think having an outside location is a great idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know where do the voting booths come from that you've used before? Are
Oh,
they
they're all the
yours?
states.
Oh, they're the, see, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, no, I do think an outside location is nice.
Did you have an outside location?
Well, yes, because we had 1,000 voting booths. We had, 250 optical scan units and all our signs and stuff that we did ourselves, because each place in Minneapolis does their own. And so when you said, I had a warehouse. So we had a warehouse where everything was. It was huge.
Right.
So that's where it would go. So it went to the warehouse, which was like maybe 15 minutes from City Hall downtown. But we'd go to the warehouse and everything would be set up there. So that's why when I was asking where your equipment is, but I realized you're using the states, because I forgot about that. But yeah, so that's what we did. Because I think that every person, every city clerk who is in charge of elections has space issues. Because you only use them at certain times of the year, so they're not going to allocate you to have that space permanently because you don't need it. And so it becomes an issue across the whole country.
Well, and especially when you're in a city hall.
Yes.
Space
Yes.
is a challenge
Right.
for every department in city hall. But then if you're a department that needs space for only 6 months of the year,
That's right.
And then
And you will find that it will be really important to be in another space.
yeah.
Because even though because we didn't always do it out at the warehouse, we did it at City Hall. And then we determined that City Hall wasn't working.
Mhm.
And I would have to think back, and probably would have been in the same boat, vein that you are. I would have been opposed to it. But we did it and it worked great. So you realize that you just move everything,
in 105, last year, after we decided to do that little sweep, and we looked in all of the sleeves and the envelopes and, all of those bags that are underneath there behind the tables, it does have a little bit of a cluttered look, and we found ballots when we were looking there. And so that's the other
yes.
part where you need space, that we're not using your space for storage, which is what we're using that room for.
Just a question, and it doesn't affect us this year or next year, but will the people who voted early, will their votes be run and counted on the day of the election?
Yes. So we've done that. I feel like we've done it a couple years now. But I really think it's a great way to update those results on election night and connect people to the election. I think in the past,
Right.
when you voted early and then your vote didn't count right away, it made people feel unconnected
Right.
to the election process. So we will work diligently with Nina's crew to get some tabulating teams going, and that's some of the new, we're going to talk about in our afternoon training, some of the new language that we're using.
Great.
And if that's something that the commission wants to come in on election night and be part of that to count those ballots, we would love to have you as part of those teams. I think it'd be a great way for you to be connected and be here. It's exciting to be here on election night.
But I'm sorry,
No,
but you're
that's-
saying at election night, that sounds like after the polls close? Or
We're going to start
during?
counting during the day.
Okay, all
and
right,
then
thank you.
We will run the results as soon as polls close. So
I
we
see,
will,
okay.
and I think that in the past we've run results, we've started counting after 8, but that just makes for a late
Yeah,
night.
it
And
does.
if we can use a practical measure to start tabulating throughout the day, but to not run the final results until after polls close, then we will have workers. So then you can go home at 8:30 instead of going home at midnight. So we will count ballots on election night,
Good.
but we will start counting during the day.
We're apolitical. None of us are supposed to be affiliated with a race or anything, but I will tell you that Ernie Hall mentioned it last week when we were down in Juneau about his race a couple of years ago. And you remember he had a write-in who started a campaign a week or two before the election.
Right.
And on election night, Ernie was ahead by 90 votes. So it was really, really close. But we didn't run those absentee ballots that night. But when we did run the early absentee in-person ballots, he was way ahead. And so that's another reason why we want to run those on election night, because that result is so much more accurate than it, and that was just an example why I think that's a really good process.
And then we don't have thousands of outstanding ballots. So then, after election night, we will still have the absentee in person from the previous couple days that might not have been all the way reviewed yet, and we'll still have some absentee by mail that's coming back and the question ballots, but we won't have just thousands of outstanding ballots that really create a lot of work after our election to process.
And then we also talked at the stakeholders meeting about how the face of campaigning is going to change.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of things that are going to change when you go with by mail, because the campaigning is going to be more intense earlier than it is later, because that's the time frame that people are going to be able to vote their ballot. So,
Yeah.
so there are going to be a lot of little things that are going to.
We have 2 elected officials on the stakeholders group. We have someone on the school board, and then we have a representative from the state legislature. And it was very interesting, the issues that the different groups would bring up at the stakeholders group meeting, and they were very interested in the conversation about, what about campaigning by a polling box? Can campaigns give stamps to voters and stuff like that? So it's really interesting to sort of
Your
think about.
stickers, you know, to put on. You know.
There's all these other legal things that we'll have to tackle, and we're thankful that these elected officials call attention to it. Yeah, so.
They have a different perspective on the other end of it.
Right, and that the stakeholders are commenting on it, so it's been really helpful. And now we'll probably have to do some guidelines for them.
Next year, will the time frame be the same for people applying for their absentee?
They won't apply.
They're going to be more.
Oh, it's just automatic.
Yeah, they're going to be.
But
everybody's
when
voting.
will those go out? Will it be similar to what
2 to 3 weeks.
before
So,
the election?
yeah.
Okay.
We want to give people plenty of time, but not too much time that you lose your ballot, right?
Right. Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to, we have about 5 minutes left. We haven't finalized your manual yet because we wanted to discuss the proposed changes with you before we did that. So we are going to propose to set up another meeting with the commission to actually go through your manual, ideally next week, so we'll talk everyone's schedule, but we'll just run through your binder really quick of what we're providing you with, and then we'll set up that next meeting.
Amanda, I'm leaving on Wednesday for Mexico for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Ooh, nice.
So would you be available this Wednesday, tomorrow?
No.
Next Wednesday. So maybe Monday might work next week?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know
Does
how that works for everybody
work?
else, but I'm
If it's in
leaving
the
on.
morning,
Huh?
if it's in the morning.
I like morning meetings.
Definitely.
Would that work for you by Monday? I know your husband's having that
I think
pacemaker
so.
put in on Friday.
Oh,
I think so.
Okay, maybe
Well, yeah.
9:30 on Monday?
And it'll just depend how the operation goes.
Right, okay.
No.
And we'll be in touch with you, Bonnie.
Yeah.
It's on the
Well,
29th.
Is
I've
this
updated
leap year?
mine.
Yes.
No, Monday's the 29th, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Monday. It is. Okay.
29th.
Okay.
Okay.
That's right. I'm
So
sorry, the second, okay.
I missed, so what time and where?
9:30,
9:30.
and we'll meet probably in conference room 240.
On second floor.
yeah, I don't know what.
But I will send out an email
Okay.
with the exact location, because I have to
Thank
check
you.
and see what's available. So, we're giving you the contact information for the other commissioners. We provide this to you. It's not something that we provide to the public, but it is nice to be able to get in touch with people. The next page, we have our election calendar, just so you are aware of what is happening here at City Hall as we move through the election process. Blank spot for your election commission manual. We will, as soon as we finalize that to reflect the new changes, we will get that to you. We provide you with the election code, what drives how we run our elections here at Municipality of Anchorage, along with the state statutes, Title 15.
Has anything changed in either one of those?
There's been one change in Title 28, and it's in your election ordinances towards the back. So it's not incorporated yet because it just passed a couple weeks ago.
And nothing in the state statutes I'm aware of? Okay.
And
I know
then,
they are hearing the bill regarding the state voter tax,
okay, yeah,
but that doesn't affect us.
that should be interesting. We provide you with the boards and commissions information on appointment, and then this boards and commission member responsibilities. And then in your last section, your election ordinances, we put in the clear plastic this resolution for vote by mail. It's really driving a lot of work that's happening in the clerk's office, a lot of work that's you're going to see with the elections this year is because of this document. And then we have had one other little change to Title 28. It's going to slightly change the look of the ballots. We had to add some extra language at the top of the ballots, and it addresses some initiative petition items too.
These were basically some shoebox items that that came up. Some of the initiative petition stuff came up during when we were processing some initiative petitions, but the part where we had two-part ballots and tabulating ballots and official ballot, we just missed those when we rewrote the code a couple of years ago. So we corrected that. And so the biggest difference for the clerk's office is that we now are going to have a binder at every one of the two binders. Why two? Because it's so big?
Somebody said they should have two.
Oh. So, but the binder is going to have all of the ordinances that were based on the ballot. So like the school bond is Prop 1, and we have the prop language that we extract from the ballot, but it was suggested, well, you should have the whole ordinance there. And so
We're talking about it at the precinct.
at the precinct. So 122 times 2 binders.
So
I think that's a good idea. There are people that want to read everything.
there was one interpretation that the sample ballot should contain the full text of the bond, the ordinance that was the bond, which currently our
It's
sample
impossible.
ballots just look like the ballots, and then if that was the case, our sample ballots would be like 60 pages.
But I think the intent of a sample ballot is to have it look exactly like the ballot. You know, so that the
We
voter
agree.
looks at it. I mean, I would not want to have a sample ballot that was, yeah.
60 pages.
Well,
So,
yeah.
and we are, this year's ballot, there is a lot of language on it, and specifically out in Chugiak Eagle River, we have these 6 light service areas, which, if you saw the ad in the newspaper on Saturday, it was huge, and the language was, or the text was very small because we do have 15 props. Most voters will go in and just have 8 props on their ballot. And a few people will have 9 if you either live in Girdwood or if you live in one of the street light service areas in Chugiak Eagle River. So but that is causing, I got a phone call yesterday from a woman who was very upset that the language was so small in the newspaper because of all that. So.
We are working very hard, and we are excited that our new municipal attorney appears to understand that.
Call back.
I'll
Run up and see if you call back.
The dilemma that we have when these props are put for the service areas, especially the creation of service areas, are put on our ballot. And one of the things that Amanda may tell you later, the cost from going by an 8x11 ballot to an 8x14 ballot was over $2,500. So there's just one straight up cost. We're hiring an additional election worker at that polling location, and the ordinances, and there were 6 of them, were introduced like on the last day that they could have been, and they got to Muni Legal, and Muni Legal is scrambling. And the one thing that we said is plan better. We could have done a by-mail election for these 50 people easily. You know, we could have done anything to accommodate this, but now we're having these significant costs and impact on the whole election because people don't know how to do something that's different. So anyway, we're working on that, and we think that the by-mail election, one of the things that would happen is, you know, we can do our regular election in April, well, we can do another one in August or October or January.
For a select group.
Right, we're more versatile. Whereas now, the idea, if Girdwood had a special election for their police issue, you know, we'd have to say, and if it was muni-wide, you know, it's $400,000. If we had a special election for sales tax that was a muni-wide sales tax, we'd have to put a price tag at $400,000. And I think people are avoiding addressing those issues because that cost for a special election is just so prohibitive.
Well, and I don't think the public knows or has any comprehension of the expense. So I can see how that by mail should streamline some of these things.
And we're excited.
I'll read all about it next year.
Oh, we'll be calling you, Jim.
Now, what do you think, Jim, on this?
What, I have a question about being appointed to the commission. Does it only happen in October of every year? Or if someone is interested, they could not serve right now? I mean,
They absolutely could.
so
as long as
the
they-
assembly could approve it, or is it a mayor approve, or is it assembly?
It's a mayoral appointment,
Okay.
assembly approval.
Okay.
But you get us a name and we'll get it up to the mayor, we'll get it, you know, they prepare those assembly memorandum documents and it goes to the
Okay, couldn't
assembly.
remember the process, okay.
Yeah.
So tell us right now what, like this year, in case we're gonna talk to people, what are we actually gonna be, what's the time frame and what are we actually gonna be?
Well, let's let Amanda answer that. Amanda, Barbara asked if she has someone that she wants to recommend applying for the commission. What could Barbara tell this person the work requirement would be for this year?
Yes, when, you know, the days that are gonna be approximately.
I would anticipate that this year it will be optional election day, although I think it would be really great if the election commission would want to come in for the running of the ballots. And then the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday following election, standard hours, 8 to 5. And then the following Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think we have the canvas scheduled for Thursday night. And that might be the end of it.
Then we tabulate again on Friday.
But we've been tabulating throughout too,
Oh,
so there
right.
might not be a ton to do. But, so about a week and a half.
And then the Tuesday night,
And then the assembly meeting.
Right.
that's on the 19th.
Good.
And like the assembly meeting and the Thursday night evening and the election there, or no election, the paid part of it is,
Oh, you'd be paid for election night day if
Okay.
you work that. It's,
Yeah.
but not for the assembly meeting. And I'm
Yes.
just thinking, you know.
you would
for
be
talking-
paid for assembly meeting.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, good.
So 3 evenings, election night, the canvas night, and the assembly meeting night, and then the rest will be 8 to 5 standard business hours.
So, and one of the questions, I think you need people and need bodies, but if you wanted to discuss, if you have someone that's a really, really good candidate who can't work those hours, I think the chair and the vice chair could discuss whether or not you want to recommend that person to the mayor. If it's a really good person that you see would be a benefit in the by-mail election, but couldn't take a week off of work.
This year, sorry, I forgot to get my phone.
So I don't want you to ignore those people this year.
I know.
Okay.
So we have our next meeting at 11, so we'll give you a little bit of a break. I'm going to get set up for the next meeting, but you can go ahead and have a seat in these other chairs up here, and then Bill Falsey, the municipal attorney, will come down for that. Okay.
So it'll be here.
It'll be here, but it will be up here in these chairs.
All right, great. If we, is there written recommendation, who do we give it to, Amanda?
To me or Amanda, you said just if you have someone that wants to serve and you have their name and contact info, that'd be great.
Yeah, I do, and I thought that he was, his name had already been put in, maybe it wasn't, but he's been really instrumental in a particular precinct, and he was asked to be the chair this year, but he had a pretty significant automobile accident down in Homer, and so we laid him up, and he said no, he couldn't do that, because they wanted people to commit early on for that, but I think he'd be up for this, hopefully.
All right, well, just get us the name and contact info and we'll
do
follow
that.
up.
Yeah.
Okay, so the meeting next Monday would be at 9:30, and it was room.
We're not sure she'll send out.
Adjourned.
And you got your email all set. So-
Yes, I've got that.
Okay.
So we're ready for the other meeting. Do you want to officially adjourn and we'll stop the recording? Unless you have member comments.
I move that we adjourn the election commission.
I s-
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you.